The muddy encounter. Alex adjusted his visor, scanning the dense jungle of the alien planet. The air was thick with humidity, and strange, bioluminescent plants pulsed with faint light. He wasn't here for sightseeing. His mission was to gather samples for Earth's intergalactic research division. But as the hours stretched on, the isolation of the jungle began to weigh on him. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught his attention. Alex froze, his hand instinctively moving to the blaster holstered at his side. The noise grew louder, closer. He squinted into the underbrush, his heart pounding. Out of the dense foliage stumbled a strange figure, barely visible, under a thick layer of mud. It wasn't like any creature Alex had ever seen. Humanoid in shape, yes, but its movements were jerky, almost desperate. The mud covering it shimmered oddly under the soft glow of nearby plants. Alex raised his blaster, taking a cautious step back. "Stay where you are," he commanded, his voice firm but uncertain. The figure stopped, raising its hands, or what Alex assumed were hands, toward him. Then, to his utter astonishment, it spoke. "Hit me with your spray, human." The voice was distinctly feminine, though muffled by the mud. Alex blinked, his grip on the blaster tightening. Was this a trick? A trap? He had heard stories of planets with shape-shifting predators that mimicked voices to lure and prey. "Why should I trust you?" Alex asked, his tone skeptical. The figure swayed slightly, as if on the verge of collapse. "Please, the mud. It's suffocating me. You'll understand when you see." Against his better judgment, Alex hesitated. The creature's voice carried genuine desperation. With a sigh, he reached into his pack, pulling out his portable cleaning spray, a device designed to clean hazardous materials off suits and equipment. "Don't move," he warned, pointing the nozzle at the figure. The creature stood still as Alex pressed the trigger. A fine mist sprayed out, dissolving the mud in patches. Slowly, the layer of dirt slid away, revealing smooth, silver-toned skin that shimmered like liquid metal under the faint light. Alex's breath caught in his throat. Beneath the mud was a young alien woman, her features delicate yet striking. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly blue, locked onto his with an intensity that made him take a step back. She coughed, taking in deep breaths of fresh air. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice now clear and melodic. "I thought I would never escape that cocoon." "Cocoon?" Alex echoed, bewildered. The woman nodded, brushing remnants of mud from her arms. "It's a protective layer my species uses to survive hostile environments. But this planet's toxins, they made it hard for me to break free." Alex frowned, still wary but intrigued. "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" "My name is Lyra," she said, her gaze shifting to the surrounding jungle. "I'm a scout from a distant star system. My ship malfunctioned and crashed here weeks ago. The mud was my only way to stay alive. Until you came." Alex's mind raced. A crash. That meant a ship, potentially filled with advanced technology or answers to questions humanity had been asking for centuries. But before he could ask more, a deep, guttural growl echoed through the jungle. Both Alex and Lyra turned toward the sound. "What was that?" Alex asked, his blaster already raised. Lyra's expression darkened. "Predators. They're drawn to light and movement. And now to me." "Great," Alex muttered, scanning the area. "Do you have a weapon?" "No," Lyra admitted, her voice steady despite the danger. "But I have other ways to fight." The growl came again, closer this time. Alex could see glowing eyes emerging from the shadows. Whatever was coming, it wasn't friendly. He glanced at Lyra, who stood tall despite her apparent exhaustion. "Stay close," he said, his voice firm. "If we make it out of this alive, you owe me answers." Lyra smiled faintly, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Deal, human. Now let's survive." As the first creature lunged from the darkness, Alex fired his blaster, the beam lighting up the jungle. Lyra moved with surprising agility, using the terrain to her advantage. Together, they faced the unknown, their uneasy alliance just beginning. Unraveling the mystery. The jungle fell into an eerie silence after the predator retreated, its wounded growls fading into the distance. Alex lowered his blaster, his chest heaving from the encounter. Beside him, Lyra crouched, her silvery skin reflecting the soft glow of the plants around them. She wasn't even out of breath, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings for any further threats. "That was unexpected," Alex muttered, keeping his voice low. "What kind of monsters live on this planet?" "They're called shredders," Lyra replied, her tone calm but serious. "They hunt anything that moves and can smell fear." "You handled that well, for a human." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Thanks, I guess. Now, you owe me some answers." He gestured toward a cluster of rocks that looked relatively safe. "Let's start from the beginning." Lyra hesitated but nodded, following Alex to the rocks. She perched gracefully on one, her movements fluid despite her earlier exhaustion. Alex noticed her scanning the jungle even as she began to speak, her instincts clearly honed for survival. "My name is Lyra," she said again. "I'm from the planet Elisar. My people are explorers, tasked with charting unclaimed territories and studying potential threats." "Unclaimed territories," Alex interjected. "You mean planets like this?" "Yes," Lyra replied. "We study them to see if they pose any danger to our trade routes or colonies. This planet wasn't supposed to be inhabited by anything more than simple organisms, but clearly our data was wrong." Alex frowned. "What happened to your ship?" Lyra sighed, her gaze dropping. "A storm. The magnetic fields here are unstable, and our navigation systems failed. We crashed in the southern hemisphere weeks ago." "I'm the only survivor." Alex leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "And the mud cocoon? That's some survival trick." Lyra offered a faint smile. "It's an old technique from our ancestors. The mud hardens into a protective shell, shielding us from toxins, predators, even extreme temperatures, but it also drains energy. I wouldn't have lasted another day without your help." Alex scratched his head, trying to wrap his mind around everything she was saying. "So, what's your plan now? Just wandering the jungle until, what? Rescue?" "That's the hope," Lyra said, her tone sharpening. "But the distress beacon I activated is weak. It might take weeks or even months for my people to locate me." Alex frowned. "You're not the only one stranded, you know. My team was supposed to extract me days ago, but communication's been dead. Something's interfering with our signals." Lyra's eyes lit up with recognition. "That would be the storm fields, the same ones that downed my ship. They create electromagnetic disruptions. But there might be a way to amplify your signal. Or mine." "Amplify it how?" Alex asked, his interest piqued. Lyra hesitated, as if weighing whether to trust him. "There's a cave system north of here," she said finally. "My ship's scanners detected remnants of an ancient civilization. If we can find their tech, it might help us boost the signal and call for rescue." "Ancient civilization," Alex repeated, his curiosity now fully engaged. "You're telling me this planet isn't as barren as it looks?" "Far from it," Lyra said, her gaze serious. "The shredders and other predators aren't native. They were likely brought here, or created, as part of some experiment. Whoever lived here before abandoned this world long ago, but traces of their work remain." Alex leaned back, processing her words. If what she was saying was true, this mission had just become a lot more complicated, and a lot more valuable. But it also meant facing even greater risks. "All right," he said, standing. "Let's head to this cave system. If there's even a chance of getting off this rock, I'm willing to try." Lyra stood as well, her expression softening. "You're brave, for a human. And you're surprisingly helpful, for someone covered in mud a few minutes ago." Alex shot back, a small smirk on his face. Before Lyra could respond, The jungle around them came alive with sounds, low growls, rustling leaves, and the distant howls of predators. Alex tensed, gripping his blaster tightly. "They're regrouping," Lyra said, her voice low. "We need to move. Now." Alex nodded, his heart pounding as they began their trek toward the cave system. Every step felt like a gamble, the shadows around them teeming with potential danger. Yet, for the first time since arriving on this forsaken planet, Alex felt a flicker of hope. If Lyra's instincts and knowledge were as sharp as they seemed, they might just survive long enough to uncover the mysteries of this world and find their way home. Predators in the dark. The jungle was eerily silent as Alex and Lyra trekked toward the cave system. Every now and then, the faint rustle of leaves or the distant howl of a predator sent chills down Alex's spine. The oppressive humidity of the planet didn't help. Sweat trickled down his back, and his grip on the blaster felt slippery. Beside him, Lyra moved with a predator's grace, her glowing eyes scanning every shadow. "How far is this cave?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible over the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. "Not far," Lyra replied, her tone hushed. "But the shredders won't let us reach it easily. They're territorial, and we're intruding." Alex frowned, glancing over his shoulder. The jungle seemed to stretch endlessly, every tree and vine blending into the next. "Can't we just avoid them?" Lyra shot him a sideways glance, her expression serious. "Shredders don't just hunt with their eyes. They sense vibrations and heat. Once they've marked you as prey, avoidance isn't an option." "Great," Alex muttered under his breath. "Just what I needed, hyper-intelligent jungle monsters." Before Lyra could respond, a low growl echoed through the air, closer this time. Alex froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Lyra crouched low, signaling him to do the same. He followed her lead, gripping his blaster tightly. "They're circling us," she whispered. "Stay quiet and follow my lead." The next few minutes were a tense blur. Lyra guided Alex through the underbrush with quick hand signals, her movements silent and precise. Alex tried to mimic her, but his boots weren't made for stealth. Every crunch of a leaf felt deafening. A sudden flash of movement to their left made Alex whirl around, his blaster aimed at the source. The foliage parted to reveal a shredder, a massive four-legged beast with razor-sharp claws and glowing red eyes. Its skin was covered in dark, jagged scales, and its jaws dripped with some kind of glowing saliva. "Don't shoot yet," Lyra hissed. "It's testing us. Testing us." Alex whispered back, incredulous. "What does that even mean?" But Lyra didn't answer. She stood slowly, her glowing skin catching the creature's attention. The shredder growled again, its gaze locking onto her. Alex noticed the way she moved, deliberate, almost hypnotic, as she reached into a pouch at her side. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Trust me," she said. "Just be ready to run." Lyra pulled out a small spherical device, her movements fluid and confident. The shredder growled louder, its muscles coiling as if preparing to lunge. Without warning, Lyra hurled the device at the creature's feet. It exploded in a burst of bright light and sound, disorienting the beast. "Now," she shouted, grabbing Alex's arm and pulling him to his feet. They ran. Alex's legs burned as he pushed through the dense jungle, branches whipping against his face. Behind them, the shredder roared in anger, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The device had bought them time, but not much. "This way," Lyra called, veering sharply to the right. Alex followed, trusting her instincts despite the chaos. After what felt like an eternity, they burst into a clearing. In the center stood the entrance to a cave, partially obscured by thick vines and glowing moss. The cave exuded an otherworldly energy, its entrance shimmering faintly as if it were alive. "We're here," Lyra said, her breathing steady despite the sprint. "But we're not safe yet." Alex turned to look behind them. The shredder had stopped at the edge of the clearing, its glowing eyes fixed on them. It let out a bone-chilling roar, but it didn't step closer. "Why isn't it following us?" Alex asked, lowering his blaster slightly. Lyra's expression darkened. "It knows what's inside the cave. Predators like it don't dare enter." "That's comforting," Alex said sarcastically, though relief washed over him. Lyra approached the cave entrance, pulling aside the vines. "The ancient energy fields here are still active. They'll keep the shredders out. For now. But we need to move quickly." Alex followed her into the cave, his blaster still at the ready. The air inside was cooler, the oppressive humidity replaced by a faint metallic tang. The walls glowed faintly with strange symbols, their patterns shifting as if alive. "What is this place?" Alex asked, awe creeping into his voice. "An outpost," Lyra replied, her tone reverent. "The species that built this planet left behind relics like these. If we can find their technology, we might be able to amplify our distress signal." As they ventured deeper into the cave, the faint hum of ancient machinery grew louder. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see another predator. Instead, he saw the faint shimmer of the cave's entrance closing behind them. "Lyra," he said, his voice tight. "I think we're trapped." The hidden cave. The faint hum of machinery resonated through the air as Alex and Lyra ventured deeper into the cave. The walls shimmered faintly, their alien symbols pulsating like a heartbeat. Alex couldn't help but feel like he was walking inside a living organism. The cool air offered some relief from the oppressive jungle heat, but it also carried a sense of foreboding. "This place is ancient," Alex murmured, running his hand over the smooth, glowing wall. "You're sure this is safe?" Lyra stopped abruptly, her glowing eyes scanning their surroundings. "Safe is a relative term, human. The energy fields here will keep the predators out, but the technology that built them could pose its own dangers. Stay alert." Alex nodded, gripping his blaster tightly. He wasn't sure what he feared more, what was outside, or what might be lurking inside this alien structure. The passage widened into a cavernous chamber, and Alex's breath caught in his throat. The room was vast, its ceiling stretching so high it disappeared into darkness. Strange, crystalline structures jutted out from the walls, glowing with a soft, shifting light. In the center of the chamber stood a massive console, its surface covered in holographic projections and alien glyphs. "This is incredible," Alex whispered, stepping closer to the console. "It looks operational." Lyra approached the console cautiously, her movements deliberate. "It's more than operational. It's active. Someone, or something, activated this recently." Alex froze. "What do you mean recently? I thought you said this place was abandoned." "It was," Lyra replied, her voice tinged with unease. "But these readings suggest otherwise. Either the systems rebooted on their own, or someone has been here before us." Alex swallowed hard, his mind racing. If someone else was here, were they friend or foe? And why hadn't they made themselves known? Lyra began examining the console, her fingers moving over the holographic interface with practiced ease. The symbols shifted and rearranged under her touch, forming patterns Alex couldn't begin to comprehend. "What are you doing?" he asked, standing a few steps behind her. "Accessing the system," she replied. "If we're going to boost our signal, we need to understand how this technology works. The energy field surrounding this cave is powerful. It might be enough to amplify a distress beacon." As Lyra worked, Alex wandered the room, his curiosity piqued by the crystalline structures. He reached out to touch one, but Lyra's sharp voice stopped him. "Don't," she snapped, her tone urgent. "Those crystals are energy conduits. One wrong move, and you could trigger a defense mechanism." Alex quickly pulled his hand back, his heart pounding. "Good to know," he muttered. Anything else I should avoid touching? Everything, Lyra said without looking up. This technology isn't like anything you've encountered before. Even I'm only guessing at how it works. The hum of the machinery grew louder, and the light from the console intensified. Lyra's expression shifted from focused to alarmed as the holographic symbols began to flash red. "What's happening?" Alex asked, his voice rising. "The system is reacting to our presence," Lyra said, her tone grim. "I think it's scanning us." "Scanning us for what?" Alex demanded, glancing around nervously. "Identification," Lyra replied. "It's trying to determine if we're authorized to be here. And if we're not." Alex pressed, dread creeping into his voice. Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a series of symbols on the console, her movements frantic. The flashing red lights began to pulse faster, and the hum grew into a low rumble. "Lyra," Alex said, stepping closer. "What happens if it decides we're not supposed to be here?" Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with tension. "Let's not find out." Suddenly, the room shook, and a deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Alex couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakably authoritative. Lyra's face paled. "It's activating the defense protocol," she said. "We need to disable it. Now." "How?" Alex asked, his mind racing. "I don't even know what we're dealing with." "I'll handle the console," Lyra said, her fingers flying over the interface. "You look for anything that might be a power source. If we can interrupt the energy flow, we might be able to shut it down." Alex scanned the room, his eyes darting between the crystalline structures. Each one pulsed with light, connected by thin, glowing strands that fed into the console. It didn't take a genius to figure out that they were part of the power system. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, raising his blaster. "Wait!" Lyra shouted. "Aim for the small connectors, not the crystals themselves. If you damage the main conduits, you'll overload the system." "Got it," Alex said, adjusting his aim. He fired a precise shot at one of the connectors. The glow of the strands flickered, and the hum of the machinery faltered. "Good," Lyra called, her focus still on the console. "Keep going." Alex moved quickly, taking out the connectors one by one. Each shot caused the lights to dim further, and the rumbling in the chamber grew weaker. But just as he aimed for the last connector, the ground beneath him trembled violently, and he lost his footing. "Alex," Lyra shouted, rushing to his side. She helped him up, her grip surprisingly strong for someone her size. "I'm fine," Alex said, shaking off the dust. "But I think this place is falling apart." Lyra glanced at the console, which was now flashing erratically. "We're almost there. Just one more shot." Alex raised his blaster, steadying his aim despite the shaking ground. With a deep breath, he fired. The final connector shattered, and the chamber was plunged into silence. The glowing lights dimmed, and the rumbling ceased. For a moment, neither of them moved, their breathing heavy in the sudden quiet. Then Lyra looked at Alex, a small smile breaking through her tension. "Well done, human," she said. "You might actually be useful after all." Alex let out a shaky laugh. "Glad to hear it. Now, what's next?" Lyra's smile faded as she looked back at the console, which was now displaying a single pulsing symbol. "We've disrupted the defenses," she said, "but we've also triggered something else." Alex's stomach sank. "Something else?" Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. "A signal. And we're not the only ones who heard it. The daring raid." The pulsing red light from the console cast eerie shadows across the cavern walls, making the alien symbols seem alive. Lyra stood silently, her gaze fixed on the flashing glyphs. Alex could feel the tension radiating from her, and he tightened his grip on the blaster. "You said we triggered a signal," Alex said, breaking the silence. "What kind of signal are we talking about?" Lyra turned to him, her glowing eyes sharp with urgency. "A distress signal, or perhaps a warning." Either way, it's broadcasting far beyond this planet. If my people, or worse, those who abandoned this world, pick it up, they'll come looking." "Fantastic," Alex muttered, running a hand through his damp hair. "So we've basically rung the dinner bell for who knows what." "It's not all bad," Lyra said, though her tone was far from reassuring. "The signal can also help amplify our distress beacon. But to do that, we need a power source strong enough to sustain it." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. The only power source strong enough is in the middle of the Shredder's lair." "Exactly," Lyra confirmed. "The Shredders are drawn to high energy outputs. There's a massive crystal node near their den, likely what's keeping them so close to this region. If we can extract it, we can use it to amplify the signal." Alex sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Of course. Because nothing on this planet can be simple." Lyra smiled faintly, her expression softening. "You've already proven yourself capable, Alex. I wouldn't suggest this if I thought it was impossible." "Flattery won't make it any less suicidal," Alex replied, though he couldn't help but feel a flicker of determination. "All right, what's the plan?" The approach. The journey to the Shredder's lair was harrowing. The jungle seemed even more alive than before, every shadow and sound amplifying Alex's nerves. Lyra moved ahead, her lithe frame blending seamlessly with the foliage. Alex followed, trying to mimic her stealth, but cursing every noisy crunch of leaves beneath his boots. "Do you always move this quietly?" Alex whispered, ducking under a low-hanging vine. "My species evolved to be hunters and scouts," Lyra replied without turning. "Stealth is second nature. You, on the other hand." "I get it," Alex interrupted, rolling his eyes. "I'm about as subtle as a cargo ship." Lyra smirked but didn't reply. They continued in silence until the jungle gave way to a clearing. In the center stood a massive crystalline formation, glowing with a pulsing blue light. Surrounding it were at least a dozen Shredders, their sleek, scaled bodies prowling the area. "There it is," Lyra said, her voice barely audible. "The crystal node." Alex's eyes widened. The crystal was enormous, its jagged edges shimmering like liquid light. "That thing is powering the whole jungle, isn't it?" "Most likely," Lyra agreed, "which is why we need to handle this carefully. The Shredders are territorial, but they won't attack all at once if we create a distraction." Alex frowned. "A distraction? Like what?" Lyra pulled a small device from her pouch, a round sphere covered in glowing symbols. "This. It emits a high-frequency sound that will confuse their senses. It won't last long, but it should give us enough time to extract the crystal." "Should," Alex repeated, his voice tinged with skepticism. "You're not filling me with confidence here." Lyra met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "Do you have a better idea?" Alex sighed. "Point taken. Let's do this." The raid. Lyra activated the device, and a sharp, piercing sound filled the air. The Shredders immediately reacted, growling and thrashing as they tried to locate the source. Lyra nodded at Alex, and the two of them sprinted toward the crystal. Up close, the crystal was even more impressive. Its surface pulsed with energy, and Alex could feel a faint vibration in the air. Lyra pulled out a small tool, her hand steady as she began cutting into the base. "How long is this going to take?" Alex asked, his eyes darting between the Shredders and the jungle beyond. "Not long," Lyra replied, her voice calm. "Keep an eye on the perimeter." Alex nodded, gripping his blaster tightly. The Shredders were still disoriented, but their movements were growing more coordinated. One of them let out a deafening roar, its glowing eyes locking onto Alex. "Oh, Lyra," Alex said, his voice rising. "I think they're figuring it out." "Almost there," she called, her focus unwavering. The first Shredder charge, its powerful legs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. Alex fired his blaster, the energy beam striking the creature's side. It stumbled but didn't stop, its claws slashing through the air. "Lyra!" Alex shouted, taking another shot. "Got it!" she exclaimed, holding up a shard of the crystal. The main formation dimmed slightly, but its glow remained strong. "Run!" They sprinted back toward the jungle, the shredders in hot pursuit. Alex fired over his shoulder, each shot buying them precious seconds. Lyra moved ahead, her agility keeping her just out of the creature's reach. "This way," she called, leading Alex toward a narrow ravine. They slid down the rocky slope, the shredders hesitating at the edge. For a moment, Alex thought they were safe. Then the largest shredder leaped down after them, its claws digging into the rock. "You've got to be kidding me!" Alex shouted, scrambling to his feet. Lyra tossed him the crystal shard. "Take this. I'll distract it." "What?" "No," Alex protested. "We'll fight it together." "There's no time." Lyra snapped. "Go. I'll meet you at the cave." Before Alex could argue further, Lyra charged at the shredder, a small blade in her hand. Alex hesitated for only a moment before running toward the jungle, the crystal shard glowing faintly in his grasp. Facing the Alpha. The faint hum of the cave's energy field greeted Alex as he stumbled back into its relative safety, his chest heaving, and every muscle in his body screaming for rest. The crystal shard in his hand pulsed faintly, a strange warmth radiating from it, but there was no sign of Lyra. "Lyra!" he called out, his voice echoing through the cavern. Silence answered him. He sank to his knees, his heart pounding, not just from exhaustion but from fear. She had stayed behind to distract the shredders, risking her life to give him a chance to escape. Alex clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. He hadn't wanted to leave her, but she had been adamant. A sudden roar shattered the quiet, coming from deeper in the jungle. Alex's head snapped up, his instincts screaming at him to stay put. But another roar followed, this one closer and more guttural, reverberating through the cave walls. He knew what it meant. The shredders hadn't just given up. They were coming, and Lyra might still be out there. "Damn it," Alex muttered, standing and gripping his blaster. He couldn't leave her behind, not after everything they'd been through. If she had risked her life to save his, the least he could do was return the favor. Into the jungle. The jungle was alive with sound as Alex retraced his steps. The distant roars of the shredders mingled with the rustling of leaves and the occasional screech of smaller creatures. Each noise set his nerves on edge, but he pressed on, his mind focused on one goal: finding Lyra. He followed the trail of destruction left by the shredders, the crushed foliage, deep claw marks in the ground, and broken branches. It didn't take long before he heard the sound of a struggle. Pushing through a thicket, he froze at the sight before him. Lyra stood in a small clearing, her back against a large rock. Her blade was in one hand, its edge glowing faintly, while her other arm was pressed against her side, blood trickling through her fingers. Facing her was the largest shredder Alex had ever seen, an alpha easily twice the size of the others. Its scales shimmered like obsidian, and its glowing red eyes burned with primal fury. "Lyra!" Alex shouted, raising his blaster. The alpha turned its head toward him, letting out a deafening roar. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "Saving you," he said, stepping into the clearing. The alpha crouched low, preparing to strike. "You should have stayed at the cave." Lyra snapped, her voice sharp despite her exhaustion. "This thing will kill us both." "Not if we work together," Alex replied, firing a shot at the alpha. The beam struck its shoulder, but the creature barely flinched. Instead, it lunged toward him with terrifying speed. Alex dove to the side, rolling onto one knee and firing again. This time, the blast hit the alpha's leg, causing it to stumble. Lyra seized the opportunity, leaping forward and slashing at its exposed flank. Her blade cut deep, and the alpha howled in pain, thrashing wildly. "Keep it distracted," Lyra shouted, retreating to catch her breath. Easy for you to say, Alex muttered, dodging another swipe of the creature's massive claws. He fired again, aiming for its glowing eyes. But the Alpha was too fast, deflecting the shot with a swipe of its tail. The turning point. The battle raged on, with Alex and Lyra working in tandem to wear the creature down. Alex's blaster was running low on energy, and Lyra's movements were slowing, her injuries taking their toll. The Alpha, though wounded, seemed almost unstoppable, its fury only growing with each attack. This isn't working, Alex shouted, narrowly avoiding another strike. We need a plan. Lyra's eyes darted around the clearing, searching for something. Anything they could use. Her gaze landed on a cluster of large, jagged rocks perched precariously on a ridge above the clearing. Alex, the rocks, she called. If we can lure it underneath, we can bring them down on it. Alex glanced up, quickly understanding her idea. Got it. You keep it busy. I'll climb up. Before she could protest, Alex bolted toward the ridge, using the terrain to his advantage. The Alpha roared, its attention briefly shifting to him. But Lyra stepped forward, slashing at its leg to draw it back. Come on, you oversized lizard, she taunted, her voice dripping with defiance. Is that the best you've got? The Alpha roared again, lunging at her. She dodged, her movements calculated despite her injuries, keeping the creature focused on her as Alex climbed the ridge. The final blow. Reaching the top, Alex looked down at the clearing. Lyra was holding her ground, but barely. The Alpha's movements were growing more erratic, its wounds slowing it down, but it was still a deadly threat. Alex quickly assessed the rocks, spotting the largest one near the edge. Lyra, he shouted, get clear. She glanced up, understanding immediately. With one final slash, she disengaged, sprinting to the side just as the Alpha lunged. The creature paused, confused by her sudden retreat, giving Alex the moment he needed. With a deep breath, he shoved his weight against the largest rock. It teetered for a moment before breaking loose, tumbling down the ridge and colliding with the others. The cascade of boulders crashed into the clearing, striking the Alpha directly. The creature let out a final, agonized roar before the rocks buried it completely. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of Alex's heavy breathing. A moment of relief. Alex climbed down from the ridge, his legs trembling with exhaustion. Lyra was leaning against a tree, her blade still in hand, but her posture relaxed. She looked at him with a mixture of relief and admiration. Not bad for a human, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Not bad for an alien, Alex replied, grinning despite himself. Lyra chuckled softly, wincing as she shifted her weight. Alex moved to her side, offering his arm for support. Let's get back to the cave, he said. We've got what we need. Time to finish this. As they began their trek back, Alex couldn't help but glance over his shoulder at the pile of rocks. The Alpha was defeated, but something told him their challenges were far from over. A signal of hope. The trek back to the cave was grueling. The jungle, now quiet after the chaos of the Shredder attack, felt heavier somehow. Every rustling leaf or faint sound sent a jolt of tension through Alex, though the defeated Alpha's roar no longer echoed through the trees. Lyra leaned on him for support, her wounds slowing her down, but her resolve was unbroken. We're close, Alex said, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. Just a little further. I'm fine, Lyra replied, though her tone betrayed her pain. We need to focus. The crystal shard won't amplify the signal on its own. Alex nodded, glancing down at the glowing shard in his hand. Its energy pulsed faintly, a reminder of the risks they'd taken to retrieve it. Once we're in the cave, what's the plan? Lyra adjusted her weight, her sharp eyes scanning the path ahead. We'll need to integrate the shard into the console. The energy it provides should be enough to boost the signal and stabilize the field, but the system might not react well to the change. You mean it could explode? Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. Lyra smirked faintly. Let's just say it's a possibility. You're good under pressure, though. I have faith. Glad someone does, Alex muttered under his breath. Back in the cave. The cool air of the cave was a welcome relief as they stepped inside. The glow of the alien symbols on the walls had dimmed since their last visit, the system clearly strained by their earlier disruption. Lyra approached the console with purpose, her steps steadier despite her injuries. All right, she said, turning to Alex. Give me the shard. Alex handed it over, watching as she examined it closely. The crystal's glow intensified slightly in her hands, its energy resonating with her touch. She placed it on the console, its base locking into a shallow recess as if it had always belonged there. Immediately, the console sprang to life. Holographic projections lit up the chamber, alien glyphs shifting and rearranging at dizzying speed. The faint hum that had been present before was now a deep, resonant thrum, vibrating through the air. What's happening? Alex asked, his eyes darting between the console and Lyra. The system is adapting to the new power source, Lyra explained, her fingers flying over the interface. It's recalibrating, but something's not right. The glyphs began to flash red, and the hum grew louder, bordering on a roar. The walls of the cave trembled, loose rocks falling from the ceiling. Alex's instincts screamed danger. Not right how? He pressed, gripping his blaster as if it could somehow help. The shard is overloading the system, Lyra said, her voice tight. It's too powerful. The signal might activate, but the field could collapse, leaving us exposed. Alex clenched his jaw, his mind racing. Can we stabilize it? Maybe, Lyra said, glancing at him. But I'll need time. You'll have to keep an eye on the entrance. If anything comes through, we won't survive another fight. Alex nodded, positioning himself near the entrance with his blaster raised. The jungle outside was still, but the tension in the air was palpable. Every shadow seemed to shift, every sound amplified by the cave's acoustics. Behind him, Lyra worked furiously. The console's projections shifted rapidly, alien glyphs merging and splitting in a chaotic dance. Sparks flew as the shard pulsed brighter, its energy spilling into the surrounding machinery. Come on, Lyra muttered under her breath. Just a little more. A desperate defense. The quiet didn't last. A low growl echoed from the jungle, growing louder with each passing second. Alex's grip on his blaster tightened as glowing red eyes appeared in the shadows beyond the cave. Lyra, he called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. We've got company. Buy me 2 minutes, Lyra replied, her tone calm but urgent. I'm almost there. The first shredder stepped into view, its sleek, scaled body gleaming faintly in the dim light. It snarled, baring razor-sharp teeth as it crouched low, ready to pounce. Alex didn't wait for it to make the first move. He fired, the blaster's beam striking the creature squarely in the chest. The shredder stumbled but didn't fall. It roared in fury, charging forward. Alex fired again, aiming for its legs this time. The second shot hit its mark, and the creature collapsed, its claws scraping against the cave floor. But more were coming. The growls grew louder, and Alex could see at least 3 more shredders emerging from the jungle. His heart pounded as he fired shot after shot, each one buying precious seconds. Alex, Lyra shouted. I stabilized the system, but the signal needs time to broadcast. How much time? He yelled back, ducking as a shredder lunged at him. 30 seconds, Lyra replied. Make it fast. Alex said, firing another shot. The shredders were relentless, their glowing eyes filled with predatory fury. He could feel his blaster's energy pack running low, each shot weaker than the last. The signal activates. The console's hum reached a crescendo, and a blinding light filled the cave as the signal finally activated. The alien glyphs pulsed with energy, their red hue shifting to a calming blue. A deep, resonant tone echoed through the chamber, and the shredders froze in their tracks. "What's happening?" Alex asked, his voice filled with awe. "The signal," Lyra said, stepping beside him. Her injuries seemed forgotten, her glowing eyes reflecting the light of the console. "It's emitting a frequency that disrupts the Shredder's senses. They won't come any closer." True to her words, the creatures retreated, their growls fading as they disappeared into the jungle. Alex lowered his blaster, his arms trembling from the effort. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with relief. Lyra smiled faintly, leaning against the console for support. "The signal is broadcasting now. Rescue will come." The aftermath. As the console continued to hum softly, Alex and Lyra sat on the cave floor, their exhaustion finally catching up to them. The tension that had gripped them for so long began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. "You're not bad for a human," Lyra said, her tone teasing. "And you're not bad for an alien," Alex replied with a grin. They shared a quiet laugh, the bond between them stronger than ever. The journey had tested their limits, but it had also forged an unshakable trust. Together, they had faced the dangers of an unforgiving planet and lived to tell the tale. For now, all they could do was wait, for rescue, for answers, and for whatever came next.